The blood money changed hands at midnight, and Jade Kensington didn't know she'd been sold until the vampires came to collect. She was folding laundry in the cramped bedroom of their apartment when she heard voices in the living room, her husband Marcus speaking in hushed, desperate tones with someone whose voice sounded like silk dragged over broken glass. Something cold settled in her stomach, an instinct that screamed danger even before she understood why. Jade moved toward the door, pressing her ear against the cheap wood. "I need more time," Marcus was saying, his words tumbling over themselves. "Just another week, I can get you the rest." The agreement was clear. The other voice was measured, almost bored. "You had 3 months. The debt is now $400,000 with interest. You've paid nothing." "I'll get it, I swear. My wife doesn't know. She can't find out about the gambling, please." "Your financial habits are irrelevant to us. However, you did sign a contract, one that included alternative forms of payment." Jade's hand froze on the doorknob. "Alternative payment? I didn't think you'd actually—" Marcus sounded panicked now. "There has to be another way, anything else. There is nothing else you possess that interests us, except her." The world tilted sideways. Jade shoved the door open, stumbling into the living room where Marcus stood facing 2 men in expensive black suits. Except they weren't men, not really. Their skin was too pale, nearly translucent in the dim light, and their hair was shock white despite their youthful faces. When they turned to look at her, their eyes held centuries. "Marcus?" Her voice came out smaller than she intended. "What's going on?" Her husband's face crumpled. He couldn't meet her eyes. "Jade, go back to the bedroom. This doesn't concern you." "It concerns her entirely," the taller vampire said. He studied Jade with the clinical interest of someone appraising livestock. "Mrs. Kensington, your husband owes a substantial debt to certain parties in the vampire underworld. As he cannot pay, the contract he signed transfers ownership of you to cover his obligations." The words didn't make sense. They couldn't make sense. "Ownership? Marcus, tell them that's insane. Tell them you didn't." But Marcus still wouldn't look at her, and that was answer enough. "You sold me." The words scraped her throat raw. "You sold me to vampires?" "I didn't have a choice." Marcus finally met her gaze, and she saw only weakness there, only excuses. "They would have killed me, Jade. What was I supposed to do?" "Not gamble away $400,000. Her voice broke. "Not sign a contract that used your wife as collateral." The second vampire, shorter but no less intimidating, checked his watch with immortal patience. "This is touching, but we have a schedule. Mrs. Kensington, you need to come with us." "I'm not going anywhere with you." Jade backed toward the kitchen, her mind racing. She could grab a knife, try to fight, run for the door. "Please don't make this difficult," the taller vampire said. "We have legal documentation. The contract is binding in both human and vampire law. You can come willingly, or we can compel you. I'd prefer the former." "Screw your preference." Jade grabbed a knife from the counter, brandishing it with shaking hands. "You can't just take people. This is kidnapping. Its collection of property is agreed upon in a signed contract." His voice remained maddeningly calm. "The knife won't help you. We're considerably faster than you and significantly harder to kill." Marcus stepped forward, hands raised. "Jade, please, just go with them. Once I get back on my feet, I'll buy you back. I promise." "Buy me back?" She laughed, high and slightly hysterical. "Do you hear yourself? I'm your wife. We've been married for 5 years. I know, and I'm sorry, but this is temporary. They won't hurt you. It's just until I can sort out the money." "You don't have the money." The knife trembled in her grip. "You'll never have the money, Marcus. You're a gambling addict who just sold his wife to monsters." "We prefer vampires," the shorter one said dryly. The taller vampire sighed. "Mr. Kensington, please leave. You're only making this harder. Your debt is settled. Our business is concluded." "Jade," Marcus reached for her. "Don't touch me." Her voice was pure ice. "Don't ever touch me again. I hope your next bet kills you." Something flickered across Marcus's face, guilt perhaps, or shame, but not enough to matter, not enough to fix this. He grabbed his jacket and fled, the apartment door slamming behind him, and Jade was alone with 2 vampires who now owned her. The taller one moved faster than thought, and suddenly he was beside her, removing the knife from her grip with gentle but irresistible force. "I'm sorry. I know this is frightening, but you'll be treated well, I promise." "Treated well?" Jade's eyes burned. I'm being kidnapped. You're being transferred to your new owner. He set the knife on the counter. I'm Casimir. This is Dorian. We work for Lord Theron, who purchased your contract. He's waiting. I don't care who's waiting. I'm not property. In vampire law, you are. Casimir's expression held something almost like sympathy. I understand this is shocking, but the contract your husband signed is ironclad. You have no legal recourse in the human world. A court would never believe you. And in our world, the matter is already settled. Jade's legs felt weak. She sank into a chair, pressing her hands over her face. This couldn't be happening. Things like this didn't happen to people like her, to accountants with normal lives who paid taxes and recycled and did nothing to attract the attention of vampires. Except she'd married an idiot who gambled their savings away and then gambled her. What happens to me? She forced herself to ask. What does this lord want with a human? Casimir exchanged a glance with Dorian. That's for him to explain, but Lord Theron is not cruel. Whatever your situation, you'll be safe. Safe? The word tasted bitter. I was safe in my own home until tonight. Were you? Dorian spoke for the first time, his voice softer than his companion's. Your husband sold you to pay a gambling debt. How safe were you really? The question hit harder than it should have. Jade thought about the last 5 years, about Marcus's increasing absences, the money that disappeared from their accounts, the lies. She'd known something was wrong. She'd chosen to ignore it, to pretend everything was fine. And now she was paying the price. Can I pack some things? She heard herself ask. Of course. Casimir stepped back. Take your time. Well, within reason. We do need to return before dawn. Jade moved mechanically through the apartment, throwing clothes and toiletries into a duffel bag. Photographs, her laptop, phone charger, the jewelry her grandmother had left her. All the small pieces of a life she was leaving behind. Her hands shook as she zipped the bag closed. This was really happening. She was really leaving with vampires who claimed to own her, going to meet some lord who'd bought her like a piece of furniture. She wanted to scream, to cry, to break everything in sight. Instead, she squared her shoulders, picked up her bag, and walked back into the living room. I'm ready, Casimir nodded approvingly. You're handling this better than most. Don't mistake shock for acceptance, Jade said coldly. I'm cooperating because I don't have a choice, but I'm not your property, whatever your laws say, and I will find a way out of this. Noted, Casimir gestured toward the door. The car is downstairs. The car turned out to be a black luxury sedan with tinted windows. Jade climbed into the back seat, clutching her bag like a lifeline. Dorian drove while Casimir sat beside her, maintaining a respectful distance. They pulled into the night traffic, leaving behind the only home she'd known in this city. Where are we going? Jade asked after several minutes of silence. The Sovereign District, Casimir said. It's beneath the old quarter of the city. The vampire realm exists parallel to the human world, but separate. We have our own laws, our own territories. The Sovereign District is the seat of power for this region. And this Lord Theron, what is he? Some kind of vampire boss? Lord Theron is the vampire king of the Eastern Territories, Casimir corrected. He rules over 13 vampire houses and approximately 2,000 vampires. He's one of the oldest and most powerful of our kind. Jade's stomach dropped. The king? Your king bought me? He purchased your contract, yes. It came through one of his collectors. Your husband dealt with a lower-level vampire who reported the debt up the chain. When Lord Theron learned of the terms, he bought the contract himself. Why would a king want a random human? Casimir's expression became carefully neutral. That's his business to explain. They drove deeper into the old city, where the buildings grew older and the streets narrower. Eventually, Dorian turned down a private road that ended at what looked like an abandoned warehouse. But when Casimir pressed his hand to a concealed panel, a section of the wall slid open, revealing a ramp leading underground. Down they went, descending into the earth. The tunnel was lit with modern lights, but the architecture was ancient, stone walls carved with symbols Jade didn't recognize. Her heart pounded as they drove deeper, leaving the human world behind. Finally, they emerged into an underground cavern that had been transformed into something breathtaking. Gothic architecture soared overhead, vaulted ceilings, flying buttresses, stained glass windows backlit from behind. Buildings rose on either side, a mixture of medieval stone and modern glass, somehow blended into cohesive beauty. Vampires moved through the streets, all pale-skinned and white-haired, dressed in everything from period clothing to contemporary designer fashion. "Welcome to the Sovereign District," Dorian said quietly. Jade pressed her face to the window, unable to process what she was seeing. An entire city hidden beneath the real one, a society that existed in shadow, running parallel to the human world. They drove through winding streets to a massive palace that dominated the center of the district. It looked like something from a fairy tale or a nightmare, all black stone-inspired towers, beautiful and terrible at once. Casimir helped her from the car, and Jade followed on numb legs as they climbed the stairs to the entrance. Inside, the palace was even more impressive. Marble floors polished to mirrors, tapestries that looked centuries old, chandeliers dripping with crystals. Vampires in servant livery moved efficiently through the halls, all of them pausing to bow as Casimir passed. "Lord Theron is waiting in the private audience chamber," a female vampire informed them. "He said to bring her directly." Jade's heart hammered. She was about to meet the vampire who owned her contract, the king who'd bought her from her worthless husband. Part of her wanted to run, but there was nowhere to go, no escape from this underground realm. So she followed Casimir through the palace, each step taking her closer to whatever fate awaited. The audience chamber was smaller than she'd expected, more intimate. A fire burned in a massive hearth despite the warmth of the room. Bookshelves lined the walls filled with leather-bound volumes, and standing before the fire, hands clasped behind his back, was the most striking figure Jade had ever seen. Lord Theron was tall, well over 6 feet, with the same pale skin and white hair as all vampires. But where others seemed ethereal, he was commanding broad shoulders, powerful build, features that could have been carved from marble. He wore modern clothing, black trousers and a white shirt rolled to the elbows, but he moved with ancient grace. When he turned to look at her, his eyes were a startling silver, ancient and knowing and absolutely focused on her. Jade felt pinned by that gaze, like he could see straight through to her soul. "Mrs. Kensington." His voice was deep, rich with an accent she couldn't place. "Thank you for coming." "I didn't have a choice," she said, pleased when her voice didn't shake. Something flickered across his face. "Respect, maybe." "No, you didn't. Casimir, Dorian, you may go. Close the doors." The two vampires bowed and left, the heavy doors shutting with an ominous thud. Jade was alone with the Vampire King. "Would you like to sit?" Theron gestured to a chair by the fire. "I'd like to know why a Vampire King bought a contract making me someone's property." Jade stayed where she was, clutching her bag. "What do you want with me?" "To free you, actually," Jade blinked. "What?" Theron moved to a desk, picking up a stack of papers. "This is the contract your husband signed. It's legal in vampire law, and it transferred ownership of you to cover his debts. When I learned of it, I purchased the contract from my collector, and now I'm voiding it." He held the papers over the fire. They caught instantly, flames consuming the documents that had made her property. Within seconds, there was nothing left but ash. Jade stared. "I don't understand." "I don't approve of humans being traded as property," Theron said simply. "It's an old law, one that dates back centuries to when vampires kept humans as blood servants. We've evolved beyond such practices, but the law remains on the books. Your husband's debt collector used it because he knew he could. When the contract came to my attention, I bought it so I could destroy it." "You freed me?" The words felt strange. "Just like that?" "Just like that." Theron's silver eyes held hers. "You're not property, Mrs. Kensington. You're a person whose husband made a terrible choice. I'm sorry for what you've endured tonight, but you're free to go." Jade's legs finally gave out. She sank into the offered chair, her mind reeling. "I can leave?" "Whenever you wish. I can have Casimir drive you anywhere in the city. Or if you need a place to stay tonight, we have guest quarters. Whatever you need." It was too much. The terror of the evening, the betrayal, the relief, all of it crashed over her at once, and Jade felt tears spill down her cheeks. She covered her face with her hands, trying to muffle the sobs that tore from her throat. She heard movement, and then Theron was kneeling in front of her chair, not touching, but close enough that she could feel his presence. "You're safe," he said quietly. I know tonight was horrific, but you're safe now. I give you my word. Why? Jade managed through her tears. Why would you do this? You don't know me. Because it's the right thing to do. His voice held absolute conviction. And because no one deserves what your husband tried to do to you. Jade looked up at him through blurred vision. His face was close, those silver eyes filled with something that looked almost like anger, but not at her. At Marcus, at the situation, at the law that had allowed this to happen. I don't have anywhere to go, she whispered. Marcus and I shared the apartment. I can't go back there, and I don't have family in the city. Then stay here tonight, Theron said. Rest. Tomorrow, when you're calmer, we'll figure out your options. I can help you find a new apartment, provide financial assistance until you're stable, whatever you need. Why would you do all that? Because you need help, and I have the resources to provide it. He rose, offering her his hand. Come, I'll show you to the guest quarters. You look exhausted. Jade took his hand without thinking. His skin was cool, but his grip was steady, anchoring. He helped her to her feet and led her from the audience chamber, his hand resting lightly on her back. The touch felt protective rather than possessive. The guest quarters were in a different wing of the palace, up several flights of stairs. Theron opened the door to a room that was larger than the entire apartment she'd shared with Marcus. A 4-poster bed dominated the space, draped in rich fabrics, fireplace, sitting area, attached bathroom visible through an open door. This is too much, Jade said faintly. It's a guest room. We have dozens. Theron moved to the fireplace, starting a fire with practiced ease. You'll find clothes in the wardrobe. We keep various sizes for visitors. There's a phone on the nightstand if you need anything. Just press 0 and someone will come. I don't know how to thank you. Theron turned to face her, firelight casting shadows across his striking features. You don't need to thank me. Just rest. You've been through enough tonight. He moved toward the door, and Jade felt a sudden surge of panic at the thought of being alone. Wait, Theron paused, looking back. Will I see you tomorrow? The question came out small. His expression softened. If you wish, I'll come check on you in the morning. Try to sleep, Jade. He left, closing the door quietly behind him. Jade stood in the center of the opulent room, surrounded by luxury and kindness from the most unexpected source. A vampire king had saved her. She changed into a nightgown from the wardrobe silk, beautiful, fitting perfectly, and climbed into the bed. The mattress was soft, the blankets warm. She should have felt safe. Instead, she stared at the ceiling, her mind spinning. Marcus had sold her. 5 years of marriage, and he'd been willing to trade her to vampires to cover his gambling debts. And a vampire, a king, had freed her, expecting nothing in return. Jade didn't know what to feel. Betrayed, certainly. Angry. Hurt. But also confused because nothing about tonight made sense. Vampire kings didn't just free humans out of kindness. There had to be more to it. Tomorrow, she'd demand answers. Tonight, she'd let herself fall apart in this beautiful room, in this impossible place, and try to figure out how her life had gone so completely off the rails. Eventually, exhaustion won. Jade slept and dreamed of silver eyes and hands that burned cool against her skin. Morning came gently. Jade woke to sunlight streaming through the windows, real sunlight, somehow piped underground through a system she couldn't begin to understand. The events of last night felt like a nightmare, but the opulent room proved otherwise. She showered in the bathroom, which had a tub large enough to swim in and water pressure like heaven. The wardrobe provided clothing in her size designer jeans, a soft sweater, even undergarments still in packaging. Someone had thought of everything. Jade dressed and was attempting to dry her hair when a knock sounded at the door. "Come in," she called. A female vampire entered carrying a tray. She had the same pale skin and white hair, but her features were delicate, almost elfin. "Good morning, Mrs. Kensington. I'm Celine. Lord Theron sent breakfast." "Just Jade, please," being called Mrs. Kensington made her think of Marcus, and her stomach turned. "And thank you." Celine set the tray on the small table by the window, fresh fruit, pastries, coffee that smelled like heaven. "Lord Theron asked me to inform you that he's available when you're ready to speak with him. No rush. He has meetings this morning, but will make time whenever you wish." "Actually, I'd like to see him soon." Jade needed answers, needed to understand what came next. I'll let him know. Enjoy your breakfast. Celine bowed slightly and left. Jade ate mechanically, barely tasting the food. Her mind was too busy cataloging everything that had changed overnight. She had no home, no husband. Well, legally she still did. But that was over in every way that mattered. No plan for what came next. But she was free. Theron had made sure of that. Half an hour later, Celine returned to guide her through the palace. They passed vampires going about their business, all of whom bowed respectfully when they saw Jade. It was unnerving, being treated with such deference in a world she didn't understand. Celine led her to a study where Theron sat behind a massive desk, reviewing documents. He looked up when they entered, and Jade felt that same jolt of recognition, not of knowing him, but of something deeper, some connection she couldn't name. Jade, good morning. Theron stood, gesturing to a chair across from his desk. How did you sleep? Better than I expected. She sat, folding her hands in her lap. Thank you for the room, and breakfast, and well, everything. You're welcome. He settled back into his own chair, studying her. How are you feeling? Confused, angry at Marcus, grateful to you, lost. Jade met his gaze. I need to understand something. Why did you really do this? I've been thinking all morning, and vampire kings don't just free random humans out of kindness. What's the catch? Theron smiled, just slightly. You're perceptive. So there is a catch. Not in the way you're thinking. He leaned forward, folding his hands on the desk. I told you the truth last night. I don't approve of humans being treated as property. But you're right that there's more to it. When I learned about your contract, I researched you, and I found something concerning. Jade tensed. What? Your husband didn't just gamble away $400,000. He stole most of it, from the company where you both work. The world tilted again. What? Marcus Kensington embezzled $300,000 over the past 2 years, covering his tracks by falsifying records. The company hasn't discovered it yet, but they will. And when they do, they'll prosecute. Unfortunately, because you're his wife and share finances, the investigation will likely include you. Jade felt sick. I didn't know anything about the gambling. I certainly didn't know about embezzlement. I believe you, but proving your innocence will be difficult, especially since your name is on some of the accounts he used. Theron pulled out another folder, sliding it across the desk. I had my people look into it. The evidence trail could easily implicate you. Jade flipped through the documents, her horror growing. Marcus's name, her name, account numbers, transfers. It looked damning. Oh God, I could go to prison. Not if we handle this correctly. Theron's voice was calm, steady. I can help you. My lawyers are the best in both the human and vampire worlds. They can separate your finances from Marcus's, prove you had no knowledge of his crimes, and protect you from the fallout. But there's a complication. Of course there is. Jade laughed bitterly. What is it? To use vampire lawyers to defend you in human court, you need to have a legal connection to the vampire world. Otherwise, their involvement would raise too many questions, possibly expose our society's existence. We have laws about maintaining secrecy. Understanding dawned. You want something from me in exchange for your help. I want to offer you a position. Theron held her gaze. Stay here, in the vampire realm. Work for me. In return, I'll provide legal protection, housing, everything you need. You'll be safe from your husband's crimes, safe from any repercussions. Work for you doing what? I need a human consultant, someone who understands the modern human world, who can help navigate issues that arise between our societies. You're an accountant. You understand business, finance, contracts. Those skills are valuable. And your presence here would give you legal standing as an employee of the vampire court, which protects you. Jade studied him, trying to read past the carefully neutral expression. You're offering me a job to save me from my husband's crimes. I'm offering you a job because I need someone with your skills, and because hiring you gives me the legal framework to protect you. Both things are true. How long would I have to stay? Minimum 1 year. That should be enough time to resolve the legal issues and establish your innocence. After that, if you want to leave, you're free to go. 1 year in the vampire realm, working for a king. It sounded insane. But the alternative was potentially going to prison for crimes she didn't commit, losing everything because Marcus was a criminal and a coward. What would this job actually involve? Jade asked slowly. Meeting with me regularly to discuss human-vampire interactions, reviewing contracts and business deals to ensure they're fair to humans, helping modernize some of our older practices, attending court functions occasionally. Theron spread his hands. Nothing dangerous. Though I'll warn you, vampire politics can be complicated. More complicated than discovering your husband sold you to vampires. Fair point. That slight smile again. You'd have your own quarters in the palace, a salary, freedom to move about the realm, though I'd ask that you not return to the human world until the legal situation is resolved. It's safer for you here. Jade closed her eyes, weighing her options. Stay in the vampire realm, work for Theron, let his lawyers protect her. Or take her chances in the human world, probably end up arrested, definitely lose everything. If I agree, she said slowly, I need some conditions. Name them. I want regular updates on the legal situation. I want to know exactly what your lawyers are doing. And I want, she hesitated. I want to understand this world. If I'm going to live here for a year, I need to know your laws, your customs, how things work. I don't want to be helpless. Done. Theron didn't even pause to consider. I'll personally teach you about vampire society, and you'll have full transparency regarding the legal proceedings. And after a year, I'm free to leave? No strings? No strings. You'll have enough money saved to start over wherever you want. Clean reputation, fresh start. It was too generous. But Jade was out of options and out of time. Okay, I'll do it. Excellent. Theron stood, extending his hand across the desk. Welcome to my court, Jade Kensington. She shook his hand, feeling the cool strength of his grip. His silver eyes held hers, and for a moment, Jade felt like she was standing on a cliff's edge, about to step into empty air. No going back now. The next few days passed in a blur of information and adjustment. Selene helped Jade move into permanent quarters, a suite even larger than the guest room, with a bedroom, sitting room, office space, and that same impossible bathroom. Theron's lawyers contacted her, began the process of separating her finances from Marcus's, building her defense, and Theron himself proved to be an excellent teacher. Every evening after his court duties, he came to her quarters or invited her to his study, and they talked for hours. He explained vampire history, the houses and territories, the laws that govern their society. He was patient with her questions, detailed in his answers, never making her feel stupid for not knowing. Jade found herself looking forward to those evenings. Theron was easy to talk to once you got past his intimidating presence. He had a dry sense of humor, a quick mind, and a genuine interest in her perspective. Sometimes they talked about vampires, sometimes they talked about her life before her education, her career aspirations, the signs she'd missed about Marcus. I knew something was wrong, Jade admitted one evening. They were in Theron's private study, fire crackling, glasses of wine in hand. He could drink wine, he'd explained, even if it didn't affect him. I knew Marcus was lying about things. I just didn't want to face how bad it was. That's human nature, Theron said. We see what we want to see, especially with people we love. Did you ever love someone who betrayed you? Something shuddered behind his eyes. Once, very long ago. What happened? She chose immortality over me, became a vampire through another line, joined a rival house. His voice was neutral, but Jade heard the old pain underneath. I was young, only a few centuries old. I learned that love isn't always enough. How old are you now? Jade asked. 2000, give or take a decade. I stopped counting precisely after the first millennium. 2,000 years. Jade couldn't wrap her mind around it. What's that like? Living that long? Lonely sometimes, especially when everyone you knew as a human is long dead. Theron swirled his wine. But also beautiful. I've seen civilizations rise and fall, art and music evolve, the world change in ways I never imagined. There's always something new, even after 2,000 years. Do you miss the sun? Every day. His smile was sad. I was born in ancient Greece, in a time when people worshipped the sun as a god. Becoming a vampire meant losing that warmth forever. The artificial sunlight we pipe into the realm helps, but it's not the same. Jade thought about that kind of sacrifice. Was it worth it? Becoming a vampire? I didn't have a choice. I was dying of a wound that wouldn't heal. My maker offered me eternity, and I was too young and frightened to refuse. Theron looked at her. But yes, despite everything, it was worth it. I've done good in this long life, protected my people, built something lasting. That matters. You're not what I expected a vampire king to be, Jade said quietly. No? What did you expect? Someone cruel, arrogant, power-hungry. I am arrogant, Thrawn said with a slight grin, and I do enjoy power. But cruelty serves no purpose. Fear is a weak foundation for rule. I'd rather have respect. You have mine, Jade said, and meant it. Something shifted in his expression, a warmth that hadn't been there before. That means more than you know. The moment stretched between them, charged with something Jade didn't want to name. She looked away first, taking a sip of wine. Tell me about the court function next week. You said I need to attend? Theron accepted the change of subject smoothly, but Jade felt his gaze linger on her for a moment longer. It's a gathering of the house leaders. They'll want to meet you. My human consultant is unusual enough to attract curiosity. I'll stay with you the entire time. You'll be safe. The court gathering turned out to be both magnificent and terrifying. Jade wore a gown Selene had helped her choose, deep emerald silk that made her feel like royalty. Theron met her at her quarters, dressed in formal attire that was somehow both modern and timeless, and his eyes widened when he saw her. You look stunning, he said. Jade felt heat rise to her cheeks. Thank you. You look, she gestured vaguely. Very kingly, he laughed, a genuine sound that transformed his face. I'll take it. Ready? Not even a little bit. You'll be fine. Just stay close to me. He offered his arm, and Jade took it, feeling the cool strength beneath the fabric of his jacket. The great hall was filled with vampires, hundreds of them, all pale and beautiful and ancient. They turned to stare as Theron entered with Jade on his arm, and she felt like prey among predators. But Theron's presence was a shield. No one approached without his permission, and when they did, he introduced Jade with casual authority that made it clear she was under his protection. The house leaders were particularly intense. Lord Cassius, who controlled the northern territories, studied Jade with calculating interest. Lady Ravenna, ruler of the southern houses, was more welcoming but no less intimidating. They all wanted to know why Theron had hired a human consultant, what she was doing in the realm, whether this signaled some new policy regarding humans. Theron handled the questions smoothly, never revealing the full story of how Jade had come to be there. He simply stated that her expertise was valuable, that the modern world required modern understanding, that the vampire realm benefited from human perspective. She's quite lovely, Lady Ravenna said, studying Jade with unnerving focus. I can see why you wanted to keep her close. Her appearance is irrelevant, Theron said coolly. I hired her for her mind. Of course, Ravenna's smile suggested she didn't believe that for a second. Well, she's certainly a fascinating addition to your court, my lord. By the end of the evening, Jade's head was spinning. So much vampire politics, so many undercurrents she didn't understand. Theron guided her back to her quarters, his hand steady on her back. You did beautifully, he said when they reached her door. I know that was overwhelming. That's an understatement. Jade leaned against the door frame. Do they all think I'm your mistress or something? Theron's expression darkened. Some of them, probably. Vampire society can be antiquated in its assumptions. I'll make it clear that our relationship is professional. Is that all it is? The words slipped out before Jade could stop them. Theron went very still. What do you mean? Jade's heart pounded. She shouldn't have said anything, but the wine and the evening and the way he'd stayed by her side had loosened her tongue. I mean, you spend every evening with me. You look at me like I matter, more than just an employee. You do matter. His voice was rough. More than you should. The admission hung between them. Jade's breath caught. Theron. I'm not human, Jade. I'm 2,000 years old, a vampire king. And you're a woman who was betrayed by someone who should have protected you. The last thing you need is me taking advantage of that vulnerability. You're not taking advantage of anything, Jade said. I'm telling you how I feel. How do you feel? The question was almost a whisper. Jade stepped closer, close enough to feel the coolness radiating from his skin. Safe with you. Seen. Like I'm more than the mistakes I made in choosing Marcus. You make me feel... She searched for the right words. Like I could be someone new, someone stronger. Theron's hand came up to cup her face, his thumb brushing her cheekbone. You are strong. That's not me. That's you. Then why are you pulling away? Because I've lived long enough to know that timing matters. You've been here 3 weeks, Jade. You're still healing from your husband's betrayal. I won't be a rebound, and I won't risk taking advantage of your gratitude. He was right. Jade knew he was right. But standing there in the hallway, his hand on her face, silver eyes burning into hers, logic didn't matter. What if it's more than gratitude? Then it will still be there in a few months when you've had time to process everything. Theron's smile was gentle. I can wait. I've waited 2,000 years. A little longer won't kill me. He stepped back, breaking the contact, and Jade felt the loss immediately. Good night, Jade. Good night, she whispered. She watched him walk away, every line of his body radiating controlled restraint, and knew with absolute certainty that she was falling for a vampire king. The realization should have terrified her. Instead, it felt like the first real thing in years. Time passed strangely in the vampire realm. Without natural day and night cycles, Jade lost track of how long she'd been there. Weeks became months. The lawyers made progress on her case. Marcus had been arrested, the evidence of embezzlement clear. Her innocence was being established, her finances separated. Everything was going according to plan. And through it all, Jade and Theron circled each other like magnets, fighting their own pull. He still came to her quarters every evening. They still talked for hours. But now there was tension beneath every conversation, awareness that simmered just below the surface. Jade caught him watching her sometimes with an intensity that made her breath stop. She found excuses to touch his hand, his arm, any contact she could justify. They both knew what was happening. Neither acknowledged it. Until the night everything changed. Jade was in her office, reviewing contracts for a business deal between a vampire house and a human corporation. Complex work that required her full attention. She was so focused that she didn't notice Theron enter until he spoke. It's past midnight. You should rest. She looked up to find him in the doorway, concern on his striking features. Just finishing this review. It's interesting. Actually, the human company has no idea they're dealing with vampires. The Shell Corporation setup is brilliant. Theron moved closer, looking over her shoulder at the documents. You've marked several issues. Loopholes that could hurt the human company. I know the vampire house is trying to get a better deal, but it's not fair. These clauses would let them walk away with everything if the partnership fails. And you think we should be fair? There was something odd in his tone. Jade turned to face him. Don't you? You hired me to make sure interactions between our worlds were ethical. I did. But most vampires in my position would say that humans are lesser, that taking advantage of them is simply the natural order. Theron studied her. You're making me a better ruler, Jade. Do you know that? I'm just doing my job. You're doing much more than that. He reached out, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. You're changing how my court thinks about humans, how I think about the future. You're remarkable. Jade's heart raced. Theron, I know what I said about timing, about waiting. His hand lingered by her face. But I'm 2,000 years old, and I have never felt about anyone the way I feel about you, and I'm tired of pretending otherwise. What are you saying? I'm saying that if you tell me you feel even a fraction of what I feel, I'm not waiting anymore. His silver eyes burned. I'm saying I'm falling in love with you, Jade Kensington, and I don't care if it's too soon or complicated or impossible. I'm done fighting this. Jade stood, closing the distance between them until they were nearly touching. I feel more than a fraction. I feel God, Theron. I've never felt anything like this. It's terrifying and amazing, and I don't want to fight it either. You're sure? His hand cupped her face. Because once we cross this line, I won't be able to go back. I'm a possessive creature by nature, and if you're mine, you're mine. I need you to be sure. I'm sure. Jade rose on her toes, bringing her lips close to his. I've been sure for weeks. Theron made a sound low in his throat and kissed her. His lips were cool, but the kiss was fire, burning through every defense Jade had left. She wrapped her arms around his neck and he pulled her against him, one hand in her hair, the other at her waist. The kiss deepened, turning desperate, months of restraint finally breaking. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Theron rested his forehead against hers. "I should take you to dinner first, court you properly." "We've been having dinner together for months," Jade pointed out breathlessly. "I think we've already done the courting part." He laughed, the sound full of joy. "Fair point, but still I want to do this right. You deserve romance, not just me losing control in your office." "I kind of liked you losing control." Dangerous thing to say to a vampire, but he was smiling, open and happy in a way Jade had never seen. "Tomorrow night. I'm taking you somewhere special." "Where?" "It's a surprise. Wear something nice." He kissed her again, softer this time. "I should go before I completely forget I'm trying to be a gentleman." "Gentleman is overrated," Jade muttered, but she let him step back. Theron's eyes darkened. "Don't tempt me. I'll see you tomorrow." He left, and Jade sank back into her chair, touching her lips. She'd just kissed a vampire king. She was falling in love with someone who'd lived 2,000 years. This was insane. It was also the most right thing she'd ever felt. The next evening, Celine helped Jade dress in a gown of midnight blue that made her skin glow. She left her hair down, the way Theron seemed to prefer. When she emerged from her quarters, he was waiting, and the look on his face made her feel like the most beautiful woman in any world. "You're breathtaking," he said simply. "You're not too bad yourself." That was an understatement. Theron wore black on black, elegant and powerful, every inch the king. He offered his arm. "Ready?" "For your surprise, yes." Theron led her through the palace to a section she'd never seen before. They climbed stairs that seemed to go on forever, until finally they emerged onto what must have been the highest point in the underground realm, a tower that stretched up into darkness. But when Theron opened the final door, Jade gasped. They were above ground. The tower had broken through into the real world, emerging in what looked like a private park. Trees surrounded them, stars overhead, and in the center of it all was a table set for two, candles flickering in the gentle breeze. How? Jade looked around in wonder. "This land is mine, purchased centuries ago. The tower is hidden by vampire magic. Humans can't see it, but from here, we can see the human world." Theron guided her to the table. "I thought you might miss the stars." Jade felt tears prick her eyes. "I did. I didn't even realize how much until just now. I can't take you out in the human world yet, it's still not safe, but I wanted to give you something real, something beyond the realm." He held out a chair for her. "And I wanted to show you that I'm thinking about your needs. Your happiness matters to me more than vampire tradition." They sat, and servants appeared with food. Clearly, they'd been waiting out of sight. The meal was incredible, wine flowing freely, conversation easy and intimate. Theron told her stories from his long life, making her laugh with tales of historical figures who were nothing like their reputations. Jade shared her dreams for the future, goals she'd set aside when she married Marcus. "I always wanted to start my own consulting business," she admitted over dessert. "Help small companies with their finances. But Marcus said it was too risky, that we needed stable income." "What he meant was that he needed access to your paycheck," Theron said. "When this is over, when you're free of his shadow, would you still want that? Your own business?" "Maybe, I don't know." Jade looked at the stars. "Everything's changed so much. I don't know what I want anymore." "You have time to figure it out." Theron reached across the table, taking her hand. No pressure, no expectations, just possibilities. Jade squeezed his fingers. "What do you want, Theron? For yourself, I mean. You spend so much time thinking about your people, your court. What do you want?" He was quiet for a long moment. "I want what I've wanted for the last 1,000 years. Someone to share this life with. An equal, not a subject. Someone who challenges me and makes me better." His silver eyes found hers. "I want you, Jade. In my life, in my court, in my bed. For as long as you'll have me." "That sounds like forever," Jade whispered. "I'm hoping for at least a few decades." His thumb traced circles on her palm. "I know you're not immortal. I know our time is limited by human standards, but I'll take whatever time I can get with you." The weight of that statement settled over Jade. He was offering her everything, knowing she'd age and die while he remained unchanged. That was the tragedy of loving a vampire. There was no happy ending where they both lived forever. Unless, could I become a vampire? The question escaped before Jade fully thought it through. Theron went very still. You could, but I would never ask that of you. I'm not asking if you'd ask. I'm asking if it's possible. It's possible. The process is difficult, painful, and there's always a risk it won't take, that you'll simply die. He studied her intently. Why are you thinking about this? Because I don't want decades with you. I want centuries. Jade's heart pounded. Is that crazy? We've only been together for, well, we just got together, and I'm already thinking about forever. It's not crazy. Theron's voice was rough. But it is permanent. You can't undo becoming a vampire. You'd lose the sun, warm food, the ability to have children. You'd watch everyone you know from your human life grow old and die. It's a heavy price. And the alternative is, I grow old and die while you stay young. You'd lose me. I'd treasure every moment I had with you. He brought her hand to his lips. Don't make this decision now. Jade, live first. Be sure. If in a few years you still want immortality, we'll discuss it. But don't choose it just because you're afraid of losing me. He was right. Jade knew he was right, but the thought of having forever with Theron was intoxicating. I'll think about it. That's all I ask. He stood, pulling her to her feet. Dance with me? There was no music, but Theron pulled her close and swayed gently under the stars. Jade rested her head on his chest, no heartbeat, just cool stillness, and let herself imagine a future she'd never expected. A vampire king who loved her, a life in two worlds, possibilities that had seemed impossible a few months ago. I love you, she said quietly. Theron's arms tightened around her. I love you too, more than I thought I could still love anything. They stayed like that until dawn threatened, when Theron reluctantly led her back underground. At her quarters, he kissed her goodnight with a restraint that clearly cost him. Soon, he promised against her lips, when I take you to bed, I want an entire night, not stolen hours. I want to worship every inch of you properly. Jade shivered. That's quite a promise. I have 2,000 years of experience. I intend to use all of it. His smile was wicked. Sleep well, my love. Jade barely slept, her mind full of promises and possibilities. The next few weeks were a haze of happiness. Jade and Theron made no secret of their relationship. The entire court knew their king had claimed the human consultant as his. Some vampires were scandalized, others were simply curious. But no one dared speak against it, not with Theron's obvious devotion. He courted her with old-world romance flowers, poetry, gifts that showed he'd been listening to every conversation. But he also respected her independence, never hovering or controlling. When Jade asked to explore the city on her own, he provided guards but kept his distance. When she wanted to continue working on contracts, he didn't coddle or protect her from the complex politics. They were partners, equals, and Jade had never felt more herself. 1 month after their first kiss, Theron finally made good on his promise. He came to her quarters at sunset, silver eyes dark with intent. I've cleared my schedule for the next 18 hours, he said without preamble. If you're ready. Jade's breath caught. I'm ready. What followed was the most intense night of Jade's life. Theron was patient and demanding, tender and overwhelming, using every bit of his considerable experience to take her apart and put her back together. He mapped every inch of her skin with his hands and mouth, learning what made her gasp and cry out. When he finally sank inside her, cool and hard and perfect, Jade thought she might die from the pleasure. They made love until exhaustion claimed her, and then Theron held her while she slept, his fingers trailing patterns on her back. When Jade woke, they started again, and she discovered that vampire stamina was a very real advantage. Finally, tangled in sheets and thoroughly satisfied, Jade traced the sharp line of his jaw. 2,000 years of experience definitely shows. Theron caught her hand, pressing a kiss to her palm. I've never felt what I feel with you. The experience doesn't matter. You're entirely new. Good new or bad new? The best new. He pulled her closer. I love you beyond reason, Jade. I want you to know that. Whatever happens, whatever you decide about your future, human or vampire, I love you. I love you too, Jade kissed him softly. And I've been thinking about what you said, about becoming a vampire. She felt him tense. And I'm not ready yet. You're right that I need to live first, be sure. But I think that's where this is heading. In a few years, when I've had time to really understand what it means, I want to ask you to turn me. She met his silver gaze. I want forever with you, Theron. As much forever as we can have. Something blazed in his eyes. Hope, love, fierce joy. Ask me when you're ready. I'll wait. They sealed the promise with kisses that turned heated again, and Jade lost herself in the vampire who'd saved her and given her a new life. 6 months after arriving in the vampire realm, Jade finally received the news she'd been waiting for. Theron came to her office with a smile that told her everything before he spoke. It's done. The lawyers proved your innocence. Marcus confessed to everything, the embezzlement, the gambling, even attempting to use you as collateral for his debts. Your name is clear. Jade sagged with relief. Really? I'm free. You were always free, but now it's official in human law. Theron set papers on her desk. Divorce papers. I took the liberty of having them drawn up. Marcus signed them as part of his plea deal. He's going to prison for 7 years. You're legally single, Jade. She stared at the documents, her marriage officially over. It should have hurt. Instead, she felt only relief. Thank you for everything you've done. I told you I'd protect you. Theron came around the desk, pulling her to her feet. You're safe, free. You can return to the human world if you want. The year's technically up. Jade's heart stuttered. Do you want me to leave? No, the word was fierce. I want you to stay forever, but the choice is yours. I won't trap you here. I don't feel trapped. Jade wound her arms around his neck. I feel home. Is that crazy? No, he kissed her forehead. It's exactly how I feel with you. Then I'm staying. Not just for another year, for as long as you'll have me. I love my work here. I love this world. I love you. Jade took a breath. And in a few more years, when I'm absolutely sure, I want you to turn me. Theron's eyes blazed silver. You're sure about that? I'm sure I want the option. I'm sure I want a future with you. She smiled. The rest we can figure out as we go. We can. He kissed her deeply. My queen. I'm not a queen. Not yet, but you will be. Theron's smile was full of promise. When you're ready for immortality, I'll turn you, and then I'll make you my queen officially, if you'll have me. Jade's breath caught. Is that a proposal? It's a promise. A future promise for when you're ready. He cupped her face. I'm asking you to rule beside me, Jade, to be my partner in all things, but there's no rush. We have time. We have forever, Jade whispered. They kissed under the artificial sunlight of her office, and Jade felt the last pieces of her old life fall away. She wasn't the woman who'd been betrayed and sold anymore. She was the woman who'd been saved by a vampire king and chosen to build something new. Her life had become a fairy tale, after all just a darker, stranger one than she'd ever imagined. 2 years after Jade Kensington first entered the vampire realm, she stood in Theron's private chambers and made a choice that would change everything. I'm ready, she said. Theron, who'd been reading by the fire, looked up sharply. Ready for what? To become a vampire, to become immortal, to be with you forever. Jade crossed to him, taking his hands. I've thought about this every day for 2 years. I know what I'm giving up. I know what I'm gaining. And I'm ready. Theron pulled her into his lap, studying her face intently. You're absolutely sure. Once it's done, I know. It can't be undone. Jade touched his face, the features she'd memorized over countless nights. I love you. I want to rule beside you. I want centuries, not decades. I'm sure, Theron. He closed his eyes briefly, and when he opened them, they were blazing with emotion. Then I'll turn you. But we do this properly. I'll call the court, announce our engagement, and turn you with witnesses. You'll wake as my queen. That sounds perfect. The next week was a flurry of preparation. The court was stunned by Theron's announcement their king was taking a human queen, turning her to vampire. It was unprecedented in recent history, but Theron's authority was absolute, and his love for Jade was obvious. The court accepted it because they had no choice. The night of the turning was ceremonial. The great hall was filled with vampires, all dressed formally, all watching as Jade entered in a gown of pure white. Theron waited at the center, regal and beautiful, silver eyes locked on her. Jade walked to him without hesitation. They'd gone over the process. He would drain her nearly to death, then feed her his blood. She would die as a human and wake as a vampire. If the turning took, if it didn't, she would simply die. "I love you," Theron said quietly as she reached him. "If this doesn't work, it will work." Jade touched his face. "I'm meant for this, for you." He pulled her close, lips at her throat. "Any last words as a human?" "Just that I can't wait to start forever with you." Theron bit down. The pain was extraordinary, but Jade didn't scream. She held on to Theron as her life drained away, as darkness crept in at the edges of her vision. His arms were the last thing she felt in her human life. Then nothing. When consciousness returned, everything was different. Jade opened her eyes to a world rendered in sharp detail. She could see individual threads in the tapestries across the room, count the facets in the chandeliers overhead. Sound rushed in, dozens of heartbeats from the gathered vampires, and underneath it all, a burning thirst. She sat up in a bed now, not the great hall, and Theron was beside her immediately. "Jade, can you hear me?" "I can hear everything." Her voice sounded different, richer. "How long?" 3 days. You've been in the death sleep, but you're awake now, and the turning took." His smile was brilliant. "You're a vampire, my love." Jade looked down at her hands, pale now, the same translucent white as all vampires. She touched her face, feeling sharper features, ethereal beauty. "I can feel it. The power, the hunger. We'll feed you shortly. But first—" Theron pulled her to her feet, leading her to a mirror. Jade barely recognized herself. The same face, but transformed pale skin. And when she smiled, she saw fangs. Her hair was shot through with white, though not completely changed yet. She looked like a vampire queen. "I'm beautiful," she whispered. "You always were. But now you're immortal, too." Theron wrapped his arms around her from behind, meeting her eyes in the mirror. "Welcome to forever, Jade." The feeding was strange, but necessary. Theron provided blood from their stores, ethically sourced from willing human donors, he assured her. Jade drank and felt power flood her system, the hunger settling into something manageable. Then came the coronation. The court gathered again, this time to witness Theron place a crown on Jade's head, delicate silver worked into intricate patterns. She knelt before him as a vampire and rose as queen. "I present Queen Jade," Theron announced, his voice carrying through the hall. "My partner in rule, my equal, my wife. Any who serve me serve her. Any who oppose her oppose me." The vampires knelt, swearing fealty. Jade stood beside Theron, his hand in hers, and felt the weight of centuries settle on her shoulders. She was a queen now, immortal, forever bound to this man and this realm. It should have been terrifying. Instead, it felt right. That night in their private chambers, Theron made love to her as both vampire and queen. It was different now, no need to hold back, no worry about hurting her. They matched each other in strength and passion, and when dawn finally forced them to rest, Jade lay in his arms feeling complete. "Happy?" Theron asked, trailing fingers through her hair. Deliriously, Jade kissed his chest. "Thank you for saving me, for loving me, for giving me this life. Thank you for choosing me, for choosing this world." He tilted her face up. "I love you beyond reason, Jade, my queen, my everything. I love you too, for all the centuries we have ahead." They sealed the promise with a kiss, and Jade thought about how her life had changed. She'd been betrayed, sold, freed, and ultimately transformed. She'd found love in the last place she expected, in the arms of a vampire king who'd bought her freedom and given her the world. Her old life was ashes, but from those ashes she'd built something beautiful and eternal. 5 years passed, then 10, then 50. Jade ruled beside Theron, proving herself a capable and compassionate queen. She modernized vampire law, strengthened bonds between the vampire and human worlds, and became beloved by their people. She never aged, never weakened, never regretted her choice. And every night, She fell asleep in Theron's arms, grateful for the husband who'd sold her and the vampire who'd saved her, because both had led her exactly where she was meant to be. On their 50th wedding anniversary, Theron presented her with a gift, the original contract Marcus had signed, preserved behind glass. "Why would you give me this?" Jade asked, staring at the document that had started everything. "Because it's part of your story. Our story." Theron wrapped his arms around her. "That contract was meant to enslave you. Instead, it freed you. It brought you to me. I thought you might like to remember how far you've come." Jade looked at her husband, still beautiful, still powerful, still hers after half a century. "I've come from being property to being a queen." "You were always a queen. You just needed the crown to prove it." He kissed her temple. "I love you. For all eternity." "For all eternity," Jade echoed. They stood together in their palace, looking out over the realm they ruled, and Jade thought about the girl she'd been on that terrible night when vampires came to collect. That girl had been terrified and betrayed, sold by the man who'd promised to love her. But that girl had also been strong enough to survive, to adapt, to fall in love with a vampire king and choose forever. Marcus had tried to destroy her. Instead, he'd set her free. And Theron, beautiful, ancient, devoted Theron, had caught her when she fell and given her wings to fly. 100 years after the night Jade Kensington discovered her husband sold her to the vampire Underworld, she and Theron stood together, watching the sunrise from their tower, the one place they could safely glimpse the human world above. "Do you miss it?" Theron asked. "Being human?" Jade considered the question. She'd asked herself the same thing countless times over the decades. "I miss the sun sometimes, and chocolate blood is sustaining but not exactly delicious. But no, I don't miss being human. I don't miss the fear or the weakness or the certainty that time was running out." "Do you ever think about Marcus?" "Not in years." And it was true. Her first husband was barely a memory now, a footnote in the long story of her life. "He gave me the greatest gift, really. By betraying me so thoroughly, he forced me to save myself, and in saving myself, I found you." Theron pulled her close. "I found you, and I'm keeping you forever." "Forever sounds good to me." Jade rose on her toes to kiss him, tasting home and love and eternity. The sun rose over the human world, painting the sky in colors they could only appreciate from shadows. But Jade didn't mourn the light. She had something better, a love that would last for centuries, a crown she'd earned, and a partner who valued her mind as much as her heart. She'd been sold to the vampire Underworld as property. She'd become a queen, and she'd found forever in the arms of a vampire king who'd bought her freedom and given her the world. As the sun climbed higher, Theron led her back underground, back to their realm of eternal night. But Jade didn't feel like she was descending into darkness. This was her home now, her kingdom, her life, and she wouldn't trade it for anything. Marcus Kensington died in prison 15 years into his sentence, a broken man who'd gambled away everything that mattered. When the news reached Jade, she felt nothing, not satisfaction, not grief, not even vindication. He was simply irrelevant, a mistake from a life she barely remembered. She was Queen Jade now, ruler of the Eastern Territories beside King Theron, mother to a court that loved her, wife to a vampire who worshipped her, immortal, powerful, free. The contract that was meant to enslave her hung in their private chambers, a reminder of where she'd come from. But Jade rarely looked at it. She was too busy living the future she'd built, one night at a time, for all eternity. 300 years after she first entered the vampire realm, Jade stood in the great hall and smiled at her husband across the crowd. Theron caught her eye and winked, and she felt the same flutter she'd felt on their first date under the stars. Some loves faded with time, theirs only grew stronger. "Forever is treating us well," she told him that night as they prepared for bed. "Forever is just beginning," Theron replied, pulling her into his arms. "We have centuries ahead, my love, millennia if we're lucky." "Then let's make every night count." They kissed, and outside their window, the underground city of vampires went about their eternal business, never knowing that their queen had once been human, sold by a coward, saved by a king, and transformed into something legendary. Jade had been bought, but she'd never been owned. She'd always been free. She just needed to find the right person to see it. and in the end, she'd found not just freedom, but love, power, and a throne beside the one person who'd recognized her worth from the very beginning. The vampire who'd bought her freedom had given her everything, and Jade, former human and current queen, spent eternity making sure he knew he'd gotten the better end of that deal.